Welcome to For the Long Run, the podcast exploring the why behind what keeps runners running long, strong, and motivated. I'm your host, Jonathan Levitt. Through personal and professional connections in the running world, I have the privilege of getting to know some amazing athletes. I've always been fascinated by the psychological aspect of running, and this podcast is aimed at exploring this and much more. I hope you enjoy. This episode is sponsored by Add-A-Day. I've been loving their BioZoom, a portable myofascial release device, essentially a massage therapy gun. In these times when I'm not able to see my chiropractor for ART or other manual therapies, the BioZoom definitely hits the spot, pun intended, of course. BioZoom is designed to help with recovery and can target specific areas of the body in different ways with one of the 5 attachments designed for tissue-specific treatments. Quieter than the other therapy guns out there, I love using mine while sitting on the couch relaxing, or honestly, even while on a Zoom call. You can get your own at addaday.com and use the code FTLR15. That's 15 to save 15%. And welcome back. I have Mary Johnson joining me today. Mary, thanks for joining in.
Thanks for having me. I'm so excited to be here.
Of course. So we've wanted to do this podcast for about as long as I've had this podcast, and we kept saying, it'll happen at Boston, it'll happen at whatever, it'll happen at this, and then we just gave up, and here we are.
I know. I had to take a pandemic to bring us together. Virtually.
All right. So before we get, before we get too far, who is Mary?
I am a running coach. I'm a business owner. I am an athlete. I am a mom. I'm insane. I'm insane. That's who I am. And I'm also possibly saying that I'm insane because it's like we're in the middle of a quarantine. So that's kind of, I'm just projecting how I feel. I
it. We'll get into that. So we've known each other for like 5-6 years now. And I think we've only actually seen each other like, I don't know, a half dozen times, but those all have been like massive highlights. We've run 20 miles together. We've done trail racing. I think we've done a couple of 20 miler, or one was a 20 miler, one was a half marathon where you dusted me in the last 5K. And it remains my PR. So thank you for that one. But enough about me. Over to you. So you have been running for a while now, and I want to know, how did you get into it?
Yeah, it's really crazy because I felt like for a while I was like, I'm just a beginner, and I'm definitely not anymore. And we're at that stage with running where I've been doing it for a while. My first marathon was 10 years ago, which is crazy. So I started in high school. You get out of gym class if you joined a team. So I joined indoor track and ended up really liking it. And I ended up quitting the lacrosse team the next year the next season as a result of enjoying my time on the track team. And then I went to row crew in college, but I always had that like running thing. So I wasn't, I'd caught the bug for sure when I was in high school. And then it wasn't until after college when I was just in the throes of my job and partying that I was like, I'm just going to sign up for a marathon so I can start having structure in my life again, because that's what a rational person thinks. And I signed up for the Philly Marathon in 2010, and I ran it on like ridiculous training. Like, I know it. I mean, the running community was not what it is today, or at least from a social media perspective, it was not. And so I just had this like choppy training plan, and I kind of followed it, and I finished my first marathon. And then I kind of did sink back into the job behavior, like the partying job, and like I would gain weight and just kind of not stick to working out and fitness, and which is crazy because I had been a collegiate athlete. So I was definitely in this kind of like yo-yo place, and mentally too. I think it's something that isn't discussed often is like when collegiate athletes leave that structure, it's very confusing and hard and depressing. And I had signed up for a marathon, but then like went back to the blah. And so that's kind of where I was. And then finally I was like, you know what? I'm going to hire a coach. I'm going to qualify for the Boston Marathon, and I'm going to do it the right way. I'm going to train the right way. I'm going to follow the directions. I'm going to eat the right things. I'm going to maybe get a GPS watch. And I did it. And over the course of 6 months, it completely transformed my entire life. And at the end of this, I ran New Jersey in 2013. And I did qualify. And my coach at the time was like, well, do you want to keep going or do you want to just, go back to the old ways? And I was like, I can't. So I thought about it. I was like, I could just hang out and not do much. And I realized that I really couldn't, because my life had been so transformed by the structure that had returned that I had created for the first time. So running for me was a way of just structure and happiness and reaching goals and eventually connecting with people.
That's awesome. So that was 2013. Your first marathon, you said, was 2010. 10 years later, you've run a handful of marathons. You've gotten a lot faster. And now your profession is also running and fitness and performance. So how did that come about? How did you go from working full-time at a desk job to working full-time in the industry?
I think the desk job was it was something I enjoyed, but it wasn't my passion. And I was in fashion, so I was kind of like, oh, this is cool. If I were to have a desk job, it would be a fashion desk job. And then by the end, I was interested in getting married and starting a family. And from a location standpoint, where my eventual husband and I ended up wanting to be was Connecticut. And so I felt a bit constrained from a location perspective. Like, to work in the fashion industry, you do have to be close to, New York or a place that has a retail HQ. And so ultimately, I did get a job where I was commuting probably about 90 minutes each way when I was living in Connecticut. And I don't know, that started the deterioration of my happiness for sure, because commuting 3 hours a day is soul crushing. And I also just realized I wasn't passionate about what I was doing, and I could do it and it was fine. But I've always had this in the back of my head, the passion for understanding training. And I loved, I was that jerk athlete in college who always challenged my coach and our strength coach. And I was always like, why are we doing this? What are we doing? Why is this workout like it is? I was always that person. And so I think it was a bit inherent that I would pursue a path like this. And as it turned out, by the end of my career in fashion, yes, I wasn't happy with the commute and all of that, but I was starting to think, well, what if I made a total life change? And I started looking into PT school. I started thinking about personal training, and I never, I ultimately got laid off. So I didn't have to make the decision myself. It was made for me, which was the biggest blessing of my life. And ultimately I decided PT school would be a bit just too expensive. And from a time perspective, it didn't make sense. And I realized I could get a lot of fulfillment from coaching. So that's the path I decided to go down. And now I'm doing that full time, which is just it's for sure a dream. I work harder than I've ever worked in my life, but it's also I really love what I'm doing. And so it doesn't, that whole saying, you don't work a day in your life if you love what you do. And I do feel that way because I work so hard, but I also really love what I do.
I love the making lemonade story there. You took something that many people would interpret to be shitty, getting laid off, and leapfrogged forward as a result. And it seems like over the last few years, you've been able to take these steps backward. And the analogy I like to use is it's a slingshot. You take a few steps backward and then you leap forward. And it seems like you've done that over and over again with injuries and setbacks and this layoff. So I want to know, where does that resiliency come from?
Oh gosh, we could get very deep.
Go for it. You said you have as much time as you need.
I mean, I like, oh God, I think I had to figure a lot out growing up. And no one's ever asked this on a podcast, so this is very deep. So my parents are divorced. They got divorced when I was in 7th grade. And I just kind of went through high school and the rest of middle school figuring stuff out for myself. And I mean, I don't have a lot in common with either of my parents. I was the kid come high school who was begging to join the soccer team, which I was horrible at. I could run. That was my saving grace, is by the end of the season I was like the fittest, but I was just my ball maneuvering skills were awful. But yeah, I think because my parents got divorced, my brother is 5 years older than me, so he went to college. So I really kind of went through high school, and a new high school. So I was a new kid. I just kind of figured it out for myself. And ever since I was a little girl, I would get these ideas in my head and I would just go after it. And so like, I remember I had an American Girl doll collection, and I never wanted to take their hair out because I thought it would make them worth less in the future if I ever wanted to sell them. Like, what little girl thinks that? I don't know. I do. So when I say I'm insane,
an entrepreneur.
there's like a little peek into that. So yeah, I think I've always had to like figure it out. And especially because my parents were never into the athletic thing. And I was always so excited about it. I was like, I want to go run. I want to go play. I want to go kick a ball around. And it was never really encouraged. I was in a couple plays, and I was actually in like a traveling children's chorus. And so I kind of relate those experiences to my experience in fashion, where sure, I was doing it, but I didn't love it. I've always loved like the movement part of things and being active and going outside. And so I think how that speeds up to now is, I've done everything from like the fashion world was a bit, it happened because I started an internship fell into my lap, and I started pursuing that path, and it worked. And I never really had to make the decision of like, what do I want to do? Right. Like, I think we go through life, a lot of us, and, we have all this structure. We go through high school, and then we go to college, and then we get that internship, and then we take the internship, we go to get a job. And it's kind of this track that's made for us, more or less. And so I did have to figure that out for myself. But I think finally, when it came time to doing what I want, like when it was a hard, like, nope, you're not welcome at this company anymore, when it was like that type of firm layoff, it was for the first time in my life where I was like, shit, like, what am I going to do now? I guess I have to do what I really want to do. So that's kind of how I landed in that situation. And I made a timeline for myself, and I was like, all right, I'm going to do this I've always been very pragmatic. So I said, all right, I'm going to have a timeline for when I'm going to, learn. I'm going to have a timeline for, the next step for talking with professionals and learning about their industry. And then by this time, I'm going to figure it out, or at least get a job where I'm getting paid, even if it's a waitress. I'm going to start earning my in-keep by September or whatever. So that's kind of like how I started the transition, so to speak.
Cool. So fast forward a few years, Lift, Run, Perform. Let's talk about that.
What about that?
For those that don't know, what is Lift, Run, Perform?
Lift, Run, Perform is a online running and coaching business. We are a collective of coaches who support and, it just apart from racing, we support, we encourage, and we give runners training. And I'm going to sound very David Roche, who is for all those listening, our coach, but like we give them love and we give them unconditional support. And that's kind of what our mission is to help people, yes, get faster and go faster and move faster and everything that entails around running, but also just to support them through all of the seasons that come with running itself, which in this crazy pandemic, we've seen a lot of really positive things come from it because we've had athletes, go through some really, really hard stuff and they've, been able to tell us about it and it's strengthened some relationships and it's been pretty cool to be a part of that.
It only took us 14 minutes to have the first David Roche mention, which is actually faster than I was expecting, but we'll get to that. So one of the things that Live Run Perform has done that I loved was the Breaking 3 project. Was that last fall?
Yep, last fall.
So last fall, it was a group of women that all had the goal of breaking 3 and everyone did it or planned to do it at the same race. So talk to me about that. Where did that idea come from? And then what was it like to be a part of that journey?
The idea came from...
And frame that, and let's frame it within the context of what was going on in your life at the time.
So the idea of Breaking 3 came about when I was trying to break 3. I had one or two very close training buddies that I was running with, and it was just the best experience is to run alongside someone going for the same goal. It's the best experience. You work with each other, you support each other, you encourage each other. In fact, actually at my first marathon, I met one of my very best friends at the Philadelphia Marathon in 2010. At the starting line, and we like turned to each other and we were like, is this your first marathon? Yeah. And we ended up running 21 miles together. And then
that's amazing.
And then she, we laugh about it now, but she was fueling with Fiber One bars. And
that sounds shitty.
It was it was a shitty situation. So we broke apart and it's very sad. But social media, I went and found her and we got reconnected through social media and we became friends. And I was in her wedding a year ago and she's just one of the best people in my entire life. I absolutely love her. So anyway, this idea of running alongside someone is just very special. And so I thought, well, let's do it virtually. We do everything virtually these days. And then Lauren Flores who was a coach with LRP at the time, she had kind of been bubbling the same idea as well. And she was like, well, why don't we do something like this together? And so we banded together. We got a group of women. We asked for applications. We got a few sponsors and we went for it. We made it a 20-week program. We wanted to attack, that 3-hour barrier. But then obviously along the way, we did address the whole concept of like, well, guess what, guys? We're going to do our very best and we're going to do our damn hardest to break 3. But if we don't, like, that's okay. And so there were a lot of like really great moments that we had as a team along the way. And then we tried this goal at the Indy Monumental Marathon in November. And as it turned out, 5 out of 9 broke 3. And then all of them PR'd. And then I think just about everyone was very, very, very close to breaking 3. So it was a very emotional day. And the idea just stemmed from, doing it with a team. And I was going through an injury at the time. Wait, I was pregnant. Okay. I can't keep it straight. I mean, I was injured, then pregnant, then injured. Who the heck knows? Yeah. So I had a kid. Like during when training kicked off, I was like having a baby. I forgot about that. So that happened and he's amazing. I have a son. But yeah, so the day itself was just, it was incredible to be like, it was the first day since I had run a marathon myself that I had felt like I had just competed with a team of people, or like I had run a freaking marathon, and it was so rewarding and incredible. And the bond that these women made with each other through, and not just like through the program, but like through those 26 miles, the first time they met, we had lunch the day before, and that was the first time they all met each other. And so we gave them a race plan. We actually gave them each a buddy to run with. And we gave them a plan, and we said, you have your buddy to look out for, and you two are going to work together. And then, of course, like there was the underlying agreement, if like your buddy was having a good or bad day, like you had to let them go. And yeah, it was really pretty cool to be part of and to lead.
Is that the Shalane Flanagan clause?
Yeah, exactly.
So I love that. I love that story. And I love that project, and it was cool to follow along with. And I think that the barriers or standards you put in place for the application process are important to highlight as well. There are a lot of people, and Peter Bromke gets a shout out here again. I reference him every time, the goal setting thing comes up. He said that people come to him all the time. They're like, Peter, I want to break 3, or Peter, I want to, BQ. And he's like, you need 2 years, 3 years, 4 years before you can do this. It's not a 6-month goal. It's not something that like, I just need to believe. It's like, no, you just need like a couple of years of base and then believe.
Yeah.
So what did you require that these women had prior to being accepted to this group? Because I think it's helpful for people to hear that that even to sign up to do such a thing, like you need to be in a certain condition.
Right. So the requirements were a 3:08 marathon, and a 1:27, 1:28 half. And I think, 3:08 for sure. Lauren and I changed the half at one point. But besides just the numbers, we also asked some provoking questions about their training histories. And I truly do think that, so we got some really incredible, talented applications. And some of the questions that we asked were just about where they were with their training in general. And that topic of, yes, like, we're building and building and building. This isn't just like, I'm going to break 3 tomorrow, is really important. And that's actually something that we addressed with the women in the group a couple times, because we were like, guys, you are all part of this group because you are experienced marathoners, and you didn't come here. There's one girl out of college who it was her first marathon. But she had shown a lot of success herself through shorter distances, including the half. So it was indicative of like a potential sub 3. And, we said that to the women, and in light of leading to the point that, hey, you guys are experienced. You've been doing this stuff for a while, for years. And in order for you to get to the next level, you really have to unwrap this final 1% of your training. And we're talking like, you need to eat, breathe, and live the sub 3. And I know it's probably going to sound crazy, but you have to fucking do it. And that means go to sleep on time, recover, eat really nutrient dense foods. We had all of them meet with a dietitian, eat nutrient dense foods, fuel on your run, make your manual therapy appointments. Like, you need to treat your body as like a temple, because you're about to go do something that you've never done in your life. And yes, that sounds intense and crazy for somebody who hobby jogs. Like, we do this for fun, but like, right? Like I sound insane. However,
I'll be jogging a 6:51 pace. I love it.
However, if this is what we want to do, we're going to do it together. And this is your shot. Like, let's do it. And you got here from the years of training, but what's going to get you to break it is that last 1%. And so we really focused on that a lot during the course of the 20 weeks, because that was all they needed to do, is like focus on themselves, staying healthy, keeping each intention with each workout, whether it was a recovery run, keeping it to a slow, chill recovery run, or the workout, and then executing. So I think that's something, I actually thought that I coined this whole 1% thing myself. And then I was reading Atomic Habits by James Clear. And I was like, damn it, James Clear. Like, I thought this was my idea. So there goes that idea.
Next time.
I know.
When was your last marathon?
My last marathon was Philly 2016.
And what's it like?
I was just going to say it was a shitty time.
And what's it like having 4 years in between now and then?
I mean, it's very intimidating to think about another one because I'm not the same person that I was in 2016 in many ways, from my body to having a baby to my work experiences. So I think I just want to run a marathon and like execute, enjoy the hell out of it. And yes, time goals are very important to me still, but I ran 3 marathons in 2016, which was incredibly dumb. And I started with a PR. It started with a bang, and it went downhill from there. And I should not have done the other 2. And one thing that I'll actually be super transparent about is we were in the process of thinking about starting a family and the family planning. And each marathon was like, oh, let's just do one more. And, lo and behold, that actually totally wrecked my body. And it's something that I see with a lot of my athletes, not a lot, but I think some people, like women, don't talk about it of like, we're not professional runners. We do this for fun and we do this because we love it. However, it is our body to, and we're creating life. And that does take up a couple years. I mean, 9 months, then plus the healing. So I think for me, I just kept wanting one more try before having the baby. And what I didn't know is that nothing changes after you have the baby. In fact, you're going to be probably stronger after you have your baby. But I was so scared for the unknown, and I was clinging to what I knew. And ultimately, I got a pretty bad disc injury, and spent 1.5 years figuring out what was wrong. Spent another few months rehabbing. Then got kind of healthy, and then got pregnant, and then had to kind of rehab some more back stuff off of the pregnancy. And so I'm now feeling really, really good and really strong. And so all I really want is to run and be happy and feel like a badass. Like I want to execute a marathon well. Even my PR marathon wasn't it was very hot. So it was the hottest marathon.
That was Boston 2016.
Yeah, it was awful. It was 80 by like mile 10. It was not good. So I haven't run a joyful marathon in a long time. So that's kind of what that's like my goal, is to like run, feel like a badass, feel healthy, feel happy.
How are you going to do it?
I mean, I don't know. Well, will races ever happen again? Who knows? I have signed up for CIM. You've heard it here first. I've actually DNS'd CIM twice. First in 2014 because of an injury, I believe, and then I DNS'd in 2018 because I was pregnant. So it's like third time's a charm. However, maybe a pandemic will stop it this time. Who the heck knows? But yeah, so maybe I'll do it there. And if I don't, that's okay. But I'm just enjoying training and being strong. And I totally, so I think the back stuff that I was experiencing, I think I started to get better and I was running healthy, and then I got pregnant, and I mean, pregnancy really just throws everything out of whack from a hip and back perspective. So, who knows if my postpartum injury was like a residual effect of, what happened in 2016, 2017, or if it was the pregnancy. we'll never know. It's all connected, right? Like your body is, this is the thing, right? The older we get, your body is a temple. Like it's going through these things. The older I get, I'm like, oh my God, I did fall when I was like 25 and hurt my wrist, and now it's coming back to nip me in the butt. Like it's, this stuff doesn't, I mean, you got to take care of your body. So, so anyway, that's really been my focus is like, yeah, I want to do the marathon, but, I've been focusing on being strong and feeling good when no one wants to run in pain. So.
Yeah, I think the joy and enjoyment of it and love for the journey is what it takes. I was doing a little reflecting on this on Twitter about the podcast. I hit 200,000 listens this morning, so thank you everyone who's tuned in.
That's awesome.
But what I was the time clock. But when I finally saw that 2 on the clock, it was like, oh my God, that was the best feeling ever. But even if it wasn't a 2 or a 3 or a 4 or whatever, it was like, that's the icing on the cake. And it was exactly like what you said, that, you're looking for that like, I felt like a badass, and I felt like I could do anything, and just being there was a win. And so I totally agree with what you're saying in terms of the goal perspective, being like, I just want to feel good out there. And I love that.
I mean, we do it because we love it. And to go after, again, like this whole idea of racing being the icing on the cake is something that was introduced to me by David Roche. And like, it's very true. Like we spend 98% of this running journey training. And, I think many, many people are like, oh, the training's my favorite part. But we're all now seeing with COVID, what happens when the races are actually taken away from us? How do you feel now?
Right. Right.
And I do think it's like illuminating some very interesting things. Like, the people who really are results driven are having a very hard time with this. Whereas the people who have already made the decision that they love this process and the hell with races, like, I think they're having a little bit of an easier time. It's not an easy time for anyone, but yeah, I think the whole concept of going out and just feeling awesome. That's what I'm like, I'm craving it so badly. So that's why I'm running right now.
But you're doing it. You did a 10 miler for the first time in how long recently?
Oh gosh. Like, I think I ran 10 or 12 when I was pregnant. But it never, for anyone who's been pregnant, it's like sipping out of a straw. You can't breathe. So I think I ran one 10 or 12 miler when I was pregnant, and that's it. So yeah, I've now run 2 weekends of 10 miles. And I actually just ran I was told to go out and just enjoy the run and just do it like for whatever pace. And, I just had a really awesome run 2 days ago. And it was, again, like I was a badass run, right? Like we can coin that term. They heard the badass runs, where I finished and I was like, oh, that was freaking awesome. So it's starting to come back for sure. I think, but it took it's taken so long, and it's still like distances above, goodness. I'll say 12 miles still scare the crap out of me because it's been 4 years. So
yeah.
It's going to be mentally, I think, tough to, get to that place. But, whatever. I'm in it. I'm doing it.
That's all you can do. Thanks again to Add a Day for sponsoring this episode. I love their massage therapy gun called BioZoom, especially in these days when I can't see my chiro for regular body work. BioZoom is designed to help with recovery and can target any specific sore spots with one of the 5 attachments designed for different parts of the body. It's super easy to use right out of the box and has definitely helped with any muscular aches and pains that have popped up over the last few months. Grab yours at addaday.com, like add a day, with code FTLR15 to save 15%. What's the shift been like for you working with David compared to some of the more technical coaches you've worked with in the past?
So from a workout perspective, the concept of effort only has been new and wonderful. I think especially because I'm at the point where I know how my body feels. So I kind of know how to pace myself. Like I'm familiar with paces, of course, but if you go out and tell me to do 10 by a minute on, a minute off, I know how I should be feeling. And so, and also the acknowledgement that like, if I'm having an off day, it's totally fine to not sandbag, but like, it's going to be okay if your paces are 10. Yeah. Yeah. And so I think from like a complete logistical standpoint, just being effort-based is a very new concept to me, which is also really kind of, I mean, I do coach effort-based for sure. And in fact, there's one woman in particular that I coach who has totally thrived off of it. And it's really cool to see. So I believe in the concept of effort-based training entirely. But I would say a majority of the people I coach myself are pace-based. So I'm excited to go through an entire cycle doing effort-based and see where it yields me. So that's new. I think also the concept of just like being able to add a mile here or there if you're feeling it, or subtract it here or there just because you're feeling it, like that openness for flexibility in your schedule is new with David. Within reason, he tells you when he doesn't want it. And he's been a little angry at me sometimes.
He might be listening right now.
I know. I'm sorry. No, I really do listen to him like 99.9% of the time. And
it's the time I didn't listen to him, I ended up injured.
I know. Yeah, no, actually this past week, it was like my first, like, I need to listen to David Roche moment. Like really listen to him, because I actually ran my 10 miles and my Achilles was kind of like, like, I don't like you. And I told him, and he was like, all right, let's just take a couple of days off and then drop the workout Wednesday. And I was like, oh, are you sure? And he was like, yes. And I did, and I feel fine now. Like, I feel completely fine. And I know that if I ran, like, I basically took my first day off. And then by the second day, I was like, I'm fine. David, can I run? He said, no. And I said, okay, fine. And then by the time Wednesday came around, I was like, well, I should be able to do the workout. He's like, no. And like, okay. So this obvious, like, great thing about this is I feel 100% fine now. Whereas I think if I had done something along the way and I didn't listen to him, I would not be saying that. So yeah, that I think the trust too is I just have it with David. It's taken a while when I've worked with other coaches for me to like get to that point. And with David, I just really trust him a lot. And I think that is because he does offer this unconditional support, and he's really freaking good at what he does. And he just has my best interest in mind. And that's the most important thing as an athlete, is somebody who just gives a shit and really just wants me to be okay.
Definitely. And I think the long-term focus is something he's helped me prioritize. And I know both of us have struggled in the past with rest and rest days. And you've been a big proponent of rest day brags and talking about the importance of, honoring your body and giving it the kind of recovery that it needs. But I know for both of us, it hasn't always been that way. So how did you get from where you are now, or how did you get from there to where you are now, where like you're able to take a couple of days off and like the world's not ending? I mean, maybe the world is ending, but it's separate from the running.
No, I actually really love rest days. Let's just be clear. I love them. I'm one of those people that loves taper. Like, I'm very lazy. I love not moving. Like, if I don't have to. But yeah, I think like the concept of like, all right, it's just a day off, it's not a big deal. That definitely, like, I think, being pregnant and working out through pregnancy was like the ultimate test of how much do you love it? You know what I mean? Because no one's making you work out through pregnancy. You're not going to be fit when you work out when you're pregnant. Like, you're working out through pregnancy because you want to feel healthy and you want to feel happy and you want to move and you want to be joyful. And if there is a day where I was just, oh, I'm tired and don't want to move, I didn't move. And guess what? I worked out through my pregnancy. It didn't mean that I wasn't able to have a healthy experience. Wonderfully, my son was born fine. I was fine. And, whether that's a tribute to me working out or not, I don't know. But, so going through pregnancy and just going through like really, you don't have to work out, but you choose to. And so that mindset now with training is applicable. And then from a rest perspective, like if you don't rest, like you're not going to be able to train. And that's probably the biggest message of like how I've gotten to this place is like, if you just take a day or two, like it's going to be better. Whereas, especially now, I'm finding a much easier time having that mindset with the long-term goals, because it's like, I want a long-term goal and it's only going to happen if I make the right choices now. Like when I started running off of having a baby, it was like 10-minute runs for weeks and then 15-minute runs for weeks. And I remember being so pissed off because I was like, nothing felt better. Nothing felt easier. And David said, it's the little things that you do now is what's going to make your bigger runs happen later. And that's just something I always repeated to myself. Like it's these little 10-minute shitty runs now that like will make the 8, 10, 12 milers feel awesome. And he's right.
Definitely. So we've talked about the goal of breaking 3 and the long-term approach. We've also talked about some trail goals you have. Do you want to talk about that a little bit?
Oh, yes. I would love to go into the ultra space. My uncle, Uncle Bob.
Uncle Bob. I love Uncle Bob so much.
Uncle Bob is a legend. So Uncle Bob is 61 or 62. He ran 200 miles on his 60th birthday. Who's nuts. So this theme of like the instability of my family, it's coming through. So yeah, Uncle Bob has been doing all.
Go ahead.
No, say what you're going to say.
I was going to say, before we go too far away from Uncle Bob, I wanted to give a quick little story, but it sounded like you were talking about Uncle Bob. But anyway, I was out at Way Too Cool.
Yeah,
in
you should tell the story.
2018. Awesome. I love this story. So I was at Way Too Cool. I think it was 2018 or maybe it was 2019. Anyway, it was 2019. So I'm standing at the finish line. It's pouring rain. There's mud everywhere. And this dude comes like hauling in. He's got mud all over his face, all over his body. I mean, Claire Gallagher, who won the race that day, said she was, fording rivers to get through the race course because there was so much water on it. So picture Uncle Bob coming through into the finisher's chute, which is a giant mud pile, and he just starts like shouting, and he just like slides into home right into this mud pile. And I happened to like be quick on the trigger and like took a bunch of photos and I posted them to Instagram, and Mary was like, "Oh my God, that's Uncle Bob." And then I met Uncle Bob.
I mean, so that's random.
Who Uncle Bob is here. Yeah.
Well, and so and I had to like because you can barely see his bib. So then I did a little, like before I even texted you, I was like, what is the bib? And then I kind of figured out the number and it did match Uncle Bob's number. And I was like, I think that's my Uncle Bob, John. And you're like, yeah, I met him. I know. He's awesome. So Uncle Bob has been running ultras and trail races for quite some time. He actually, so the reason I didn't mention this, but the reason I've signed up for CIM so often is because Uncle Bob and his wife live at mile 13 of the CIM race. So like, it's always been the plan that like, we're going to go over there. My Aunt Marcy is going to drive me to the starting line. I've run the first half of the course before when I visited them. So like, I'm also very keen on having like a low key, chill, enjoyable, like again, with the theme of like enjoying it. Like, I just want to go and like see my family, and staying at their house is a very familiar, comforting thing for me. So anyway, I digress. Uncle Bob has been doing ultras for a while. He's always been pushing me to doing them. And I've always, like, before I ran, I was like, no, you're crazy. And now I'm like, yeah, let's do ultras. So I don't, he will go and do 200-mile races through the Italian Alps. And I'm not sure I'll ever do that, but, I would love to run. There is a part of me that just wants to sign up for 100-miler, because it's kind of like my urge for signing up for the marathon, where like, I hadn't even run a half. Like, I was like, oh, F it, I'm going to do the marathon. Like, that's kind of how I feel about the 100-miler.
One of those too.
What?
I love that. They're so that was my experience also. Like, signing up for a marathon was my first race.
Yeah.
And I've only met like 5 other people who have gone that route. So
yeah,
that's awesome.
No, that was my first race of my life. And I'm actually that's a lie. That's a lie. I ran I did a triathlon, like a mini, like local thing.
Got it. We'll skip that.
Yeah, we'll skip that. That's not running. That's like biking and swimming and stuff. Yeah.
It's a different sport.
Totally. So I just kind of feel like, I don't know, I just want to like sign up for a big one. But I know.
What is it about the 100?
I mean, it's 100 miles. I think I'm very intrigued with the mental part of it. I think I would do very well with just being like, telling myself like, you're going to freaking do this. And maybe not, maybe I'm going to fail. I don't know. That's exciting too. But, I just think it's really cool to, and I recognize that ultra marathoning is all it's, about staying on your feet, being very mentally strong, fueling correctly, and just working through the hours. And so that challenge is really exciting, right? Because like, we can run fast and do like halves and marathons and stuff, but the ultra is just like a survival race, and it's a survival adventure. So that's cool. I think that's really awesome. So we'll see. Uncle Bob wants me to do the way too cool 50K. Wait, is it 50K or 50? Is it 50 miles?
50K.
50K, yeah.
No, it's a 50K. That one is a blast. The community is incredible, and it's such a low key event. And then they give you frog cupcakes at the end of it.
Oh. Yeah, it was his. So that was his first one. So he was like, you can hold, but you know what? The reason why I have to keep marathoning is because I have to beat his PR, which I think is like a 3:03, 3:02. So I'm on that quest first, and then we'll attack the ultras. But I think I would love to go to Western states. I would love to I just feel like I would be just good. I feel, especially now with all the strength I've done, I feel pretty resilient. I dabbled in a little trail stuff, and from an agility standpoint, I do very well. The trails in Connecticut are very technical and gross, and I think it's been great training. While we don't have vertical, we've got lots of rocks and roots, and it's been, any trail runner in Connecticut can understand that going for a 60-minute trail run is exhausting, because you're mentally just like step. And it's very hard. So, and Connecticut, I mean like Northeast. I don't know how your trails are, but they're tough. So, yeah, I would love to do the big ones, and then Western states just seems like a nice little ribbon on the whole thing.
You got to get out to one and inspect it. Well,
yeah,
when possible, but it's the coolest environment. If for someone who loves the community as much as you do, a marathon's cool to watch, but being at an aid station of an ultra in the later stages of the race you see some stuff, and it's incredible.
Have you crewed for anyone?
I have, and I crewed at Run Rabbit, which is in Steamboat Springs, Colorado. It's a 100-miler. And then I've spectated Western States once and was planning to be out there again this year. And it's incredible.
Yeah. But yeah, I think that's where I should talk to Uncle Bob and volunteer to crew his next thing. But that's how new I am to the whole thing. I've dabbled in these local things, these local trail races, and know that I love the trails, but I'm ready to commit to something. I think probably, long term, that's where I see myself the most.
Awesome. What are you scared of?
For a long time, I said I was scared of failure. And I think I probably still am. But what I'm trying to work on is not being scared of that and knowing that the more times we put ourselves into uncomfortable situations and have uncomfortable conversations, the less we fail, the more we learn. So we're getting there. I get overwhelmed with not having enough time on my plate to do things. Not having enough time in my day to do things that are on my plate. I really want to be a good mom to Eli, my son, and I'm nervous. I wouldn't say this is what I'm most afraid of, but I'm very conscious of how much I work, and I want him to look up to me and to have a mom that's present, not a mom that's constantly on her devices. So that's something that I'm very conscious about. And so I don't think I'm scared. I'm not scared. I think I do for sure have some insecurities. But in the, I try to be pragmatic and logical about most situations. So things that do scare me and things where, I'm, feeling uneasy and insecure, I try to use reason and if all else fails, take some CBD.
And go for a run.
I mean, go for a run. Yeah.
So the aspect of balance is one that's fascinating, and it's also one that I like to talk about on this podcast. There have been two explanations of it that have stood out. The first was Magda Boulay, who said, I don't think that I need to be balanced. I think that I need to focus on the things that matter to me most. And if, her son, her husband, her dog, her employees, her training, those are the pillars of what she cares most about. And everything else is, it's great if it gets done, but it doesn't need to be done. And then Lindsay Krause, who is on a couple episodes ago, explained it like a triangle. And so in theory, you want everything to be, equilateral, but sometimes that's not the case. And what you don't want is for, and she did a much better job of explaining it than I do. So please go back to, actually, I think I have the quote right here. Never mind, I don't. So she basically explained it saying sometimes, you focus more on one aspect. Like if you're marathon training, the running portion of your triangle, where it's running, work, and life being the three sides. Sometimes the running skews further, but if it goes too far, the triangle collapses, and that's what you want to avoid. So, again, please go back and listen to that episode if you're listening to this, because she did a much better job explaining it than I did. But anyway, I want to know what is balance for you, and how do you ensure that Eli and Gabe and the other pieces of your life that are very important to you, how get the attention that you want to give?
I used to really think balance was achievable. And it was something I preached, and I was like, yeah, balance is key. And I don't think it's a thing. But I do believe I'm more in the Magna Boulay sense of I have my pillars. My pillars are my family, my son, my husband, my training, my work, and sleep. I would also go on to say that I think that there's seasons of where we're at. And I think like that's kind of where I've been like gravitating towards lately, where listen, if we've got a race, we're going to ramp up the training, and I might not be able to put Eli to bed every single night. You know, I might need to split that with Gabe, and Eli's my son and Gabe is my husband. So, and that's my season. That's my, like, you know, my 4 weeks leading up to a marathon. That's where it gets really hairy. But that season doesn't last forever. And so being able to be flexible through the seasons is something that I believe more in, I think now, where it's like, you know, the season. So like, I'll use myself for an example. Had a baby, the first season was survival, you know, was like keeping him alive, keeping me alive, keeping my husband sane, like keeping us all together as a family unit, and learning how to, you know, nurture this new life. And then came, oh, mom can start having some more free time. Well, I'll add in a few days a week. And that was a nice season too, where like the season was still about survival, but then I could add in a couple extra things. And then over time, it turned into like, all right, my baby's a little older. Now this season is more about growing and developing myself, because I can balance. I'm better at the momming thing now. You know what I mean? Like I know how to make this little human survive. So I'm going to shift a little bit. So this concept of seasons, it's always evolving. I think as users of this concept, we need to be able to like have honest evaluations as to how we're performing in each season, and like how we're able to achieve the tasks that we're trying to. Like I would say right now I'm in a season, well, God, COVID, we're back in survival. But like, and to be honest,
get through it. Yeah.
Just get through it. Yeah. To be honest, this season has been about teamwork with Gabe, and like, you know, giving him time to do his work and having me play with the baby, and then him having Eli, and then having me being able to do work and training, like basically going through the season of team. So, you know, this season will change in 2 or 3 months. So I think being open to the fact that balance is not necessarily something we should strive for, but more so being open to having these changes, and like being really working as hard as we can, and being open to having that change in a couple months. And then if we're sucking, like if we are just not happy, and to like zone out and be like, all right, well, what's making me suck in this situation? Like, am I not prioritize? Am I spending too much time on social media? Am I not focused enough? Am I spending too much time training? Do I need to reel that in? You know what I mean? And having an honest approach at our behavior, so we can make tangible actions, is the whole point. And that's just like how you progress forward. If you can take an honest look at how your performance is going. And you do have to be and like some people will have a mentor or coach or whatever, or even a spouse that they can do this with. Like being able to take that type of feedback and then make some type of action from it is really important, because otherwise we're just kind of going to be stuck in this cycle of whatever we're in, whether that's good or bad. I don't know if that made sense.
It definitely did. No, the seasonality of it is, I think, a really good way to look at it. Like, it's not going to be like this forever. And it's like the pendulum swings far one way, and then it swings far another way, and then it's back and forth. I love that. One other question I had, and you've mentioned it a couple of times, social media. You've got a pretty strong following, pretty engaged following on social media. So I want to know, like, how do you fit that aspect into your day to day, with the brands you partner with and with the work that you do, and how your own personal social media supports your professional development?
Social media has always been a hobby of mine. And it's when I ran my first marathon in 2010, that's where It's a Marathon started. I was raising money for a summer camp that I used to go to and later worked at when I was a kid. And I wanted my friends and family to be looped in with how my training was going. So I started a blog, and Instagram wasn't a thing yet. I started Twitter, and I never went through the personal, like I never had just like a generic Mary account. It was always It's a Marathon. And in the beginning, before like Instagramming about running was cool, I used to be really embarrassed by it. People would be like, "Oh, what's your Twitter?" I'd be like, it's not important. Like, I don't have one." Now it's cool. So I'm like, yeah, It's a Marathon. But anyway, I think that concept of maintaining it's obviously evolved to more than just a hobby. But I think that is part of the equation of my equation that I do struggle with, because it's important. It's made me fantastic connections and friends. I struggle with consumption and like getting frustrated at the quality that I see, and I try to back away and not get too ramped up. Because it's overwhelming, the amount of information and the amount of shitty information. So on days like that, I try to just remember that I'm on it for happiness, for entertainment, to send my message about my training tips, motivation, and to connect with great people. That's it. And to learn. There are for sure some fantastic accounts that I've learned, and I've made connections with those people too, and I continue to learn from them. So the brand partnership and that aspect, from a time perspective, is those are the nights I don't sleep. But yeah, it's not because social media is not my job. It isn't really part of my time budgeting equation, if that makes sense. I don't have like a content calendar. I don't plan out what I'm doing. I just put it out there. And that's what I've always done. And maybe if I planned it, I would have 20,000 more followers. I don't know, but I don't care. And I'm satisfied with how things go. And I keep it true to who I am and what I do. And that's really the intention behind it. And if I've had a partnership with Momentous, the protein brand, this past year. I shouldn't just say protein. They have more than just protein. And that came out of social media. And that has been an incredible blessing because I support the brand. It's been really great working with them. And it's been a really cool experience. So I guess that is an argument against what I'm saying. It is kind of my job. But yeah, I think, in case you couldn't tell, I'm still struggling with that part of my identity, and it's a big identity. So I should probably figure it out. But yeah, I think that the real resonating answer is that I see myself as a professional and as a coach. And if Instagram blew up tomorrow, I want to be able to be a damn good coach and a damn good professional and focus on my career and be good at my job. And that is as a fitness professional, as a running coach, and that's it. So, who knows, like TikTok's next. Like, I don't know how the heck to do that stuff. Like, I'm not dancing on this platform. Like, I'm probably like, there's no way I'm going to go dance and do things like that. So I'm like, It's a Marathon is going to die in 2020. But yeah, so that is a long-winded way of saying, social media is fantastic. And it's got its highs, it's got its lows. For me, it's opened really cool opportunities. It's made Lift Run Perform gain exposure and traction, and that I cannot, deny at all. But at the end of the day, like, my focus is being a damn good coach.
Awesome. Before we go, what's one thing you wish people knew about you?
Oh gosh. I've said a lot of things today that I've never said out loud. So
So the answer is go back and listen, and you'll learn some things.
Yeah. Yeah. I mean, I
people have said like I play piano or.
Yeah. I'm a lefty. I don't know if anyone knows that. I'm a lefty and I'm 5'9". I think a lot of people know that I'm tall, but you don't know I'm a lefty. There you go.
There we go. Cool. Where can we find you if we haven't listened to the last 10 minutes?
I am It's a Marathon on Instagram. My website is it'samarathon.com. My business is liftRunPerform.com. And then, of course, Lift Run Perform on Instagram. And you can email me anytime. Say hi. It's just Mary at liftrunperform.com.
Awesome. Thank you so much, Mary.
Thank you. It was nice chatting.
That's it for today's episode. Like many long runs, it's sad when it has to end. I hope you join in next week on For the Long Run. And in the meantime, happy trails. If you've enjoyed this episode, it would mean a lot to me if you shared it so that others can find it and enjoy it too.